My wife's family treated me like an outsider. Now they're asking for financial help. When I first met Taylor's family, I had no illusions about how they would react to me. Taylor had warned me they were wealthy, traditional, and, well, judgmental. I brushed it off at the time, thinking, how bad could it really be? Turns out, it was worse than I imagined. The first family dinner was a disaster. Taylor's mum, Linda, greeted me with a tight-lipped smile, the kind you give someone who just tracked mud into your house. Their dad, Charles, barely looked up from his phone, and Taylor's older sister, Vanessa, eyed me like I was a stray dog begging for scraps. "So, Alex," Linda began, swirling her wine, "what exactly is it that you do?" "I'm in marketing," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "I work for a small agency right now, but I'm building my own client base." Her smile tightened even more. "Oh, how quaint." The rest of the dinner followed the same pattern. Every time I spoke, someone would interrupt or change the subject. When I mentioned my parents, who run a modest diner, Vanessa snorted. "A diner? That's cute," she said, not even bothering to hide her smirk. Taylor squeezed my hand under the table, silently apologizing. I smiled back, pretending it didn't bother me. But it did. Over the years, it became clear that I would always be an outsider in their eyes. No matter how much I loved Taylor or how hard I worked, I would never be good enough for their elite circle. Holidays were the worst. Linda would insist on hosting elaborate dinners, complete with caterers and live musicians, and I'd be relegated to the sidelines, ignored unless someone needed to make a backhanded comment. Once, Charles casually joked, "Taylor, you should have gone for someone in finance. They'd have more in common with the family." I laughed it off at the time, but inside, it stung. Taylor always defended me, but it was hard for them too. Their family had a way of making you feel like you owed them something, like their approval was a prize you had to earn. For years, I played along, biting my tongue and pretending their jabs didn't hurt. But everything changed when I started my own business. It wasn't easy. I poured every ounce of energy into building my agency from the ground up, working late nights and weekends to secure clients. Taylor supported me through it all, cheering me on even when I doubted myself. And slowly but surely, my hard work paid off. I landed a major contract with a tech company, and from there, my business took off. Within a few years, I was making more money than I ever thought possible. I bought a house, upgraded my car, and finally felt like I was in control of my life. Meanwhile, Taylor's family was facing their own challenges. Charles made some bad investments, and their real estate holdings took a hit. Vanessa's lavish lifestyle started catching up with her, and Linda's carefully curated image began to crack. I thought they'd still keep me at arm's length, but I was wrong. When the cracks in their perfect facade turned into gaping holes, they suddenly remembered I existed. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. Linda, who had always regarded me with barely concealed disdain, suddenly began texting Taylor to check in. At first, I thought it was sweet. Maybe she was finally trying to connect. Then came the invitations. "Alex, we'd love for you to join us for brunch this Sunday," Linda said one evening over the phone. "It's been far too long since we've all spent time together." Far too long? I almost laughed. I'd spent years being the person they tolerated because of Taylor, and now Linda was treating me like I was part of the family. Taylor noticed it too. "What's going on with them?" they asked one night. "Mum hasn't been this nice since, well, ever." I shrugged. Maybe they're mellowing out. But the truth revealed itself soon enough. During one of those newly frequent family brunches, Charles leaned in, his voice unusually soft. "So, Alex," he began, his tone measured. "Taylor tells us your business is doing really well." I nodded, sipping my coffee. "It's been a good year." "Good for you," he said with a tight smile. "You know, I always believed in hard work. It's admirable to see someone pulling themselves up by their bootstraps." I wanted to remind him that he'd never expressed even a shred of belief in me before, but I bit my tongue. Then, as if on cue, Linda chimed in. "Speaking of hard work, Charles and I have been thinking about branching out into some new ventures." "Oh," I said, raising an eyebrow. "Yes," Charles said, clearing his throat. "With the market being what it is, we've hit a few hiccups. Nothing major, of course, but we could use a little support to get things back on track." And there it was. They weren't suddenly kind and interested because they cared. They were in financial trouble, and I was their ticket out. I stayed polite, pretending not to notice the subtext of their comments. Taylor, however, wasn't having it. "Are you seriously asking Alex for money?" they blurted out, their tone sharp enough to make Linda flinch. "Taylor, don't be ridiculous," Linda said, her voice dripping with fake innocence. "We're not asking for money. We're just considering all our options. As a family." I set my fork down and took a deep breath. "I think it's best we finish brunch," I said calmly. Linda opened her mouth to protest, but Charles put a hand on her arm and she backed down. On the drive home, Taylor was fuming. "I can't believe them. After all these years of treating you like an outsider, they think they can just turn around and ask for help." I shrugged, trying to brush it off. It's not the first time they've underestimated me. But the truth was, their audacity had hit a nerve. Over the next few weeks, the pressure from Taylor's family intensified. They didn't outright ask for money again, but their intentions were clear. Linda started calling Taylor more often, dropping hints about their financial struggles. "It's just been so hard lately," she'd say, her voice carrying an exaggerated weariness. "Your father and I have worked so hard for so many years. We just never thought we'd be in a position like this." Charles played a different angle. "I was just thinking about how lucky we are to have Alex in the family," he said over dinner one night. "Not many people have the resources or the wisdom to succeed the way he has." It was manipulation disguised as flattery, and Taylor saw right through it. "They're shameless," Taylor said one evening after another call from Linda. "It's like they think they can guilt us into helping them." "I don't want this to drive a wedge between you and your family," I said carefully. "It's not," Taylor replied firmly. "If anything, it's bringing back all the reasons why I've kept them at arm's length for so long." Despite Taylor's reassurances, I couldn't shake the feeling that this situation was spiraling into something bigger. One evening, Taylor and I were sitting on the couch, unwinding after a long day, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Linda. "Linda, hi Alex, I hope you're well. Charles and I were wondering if you'd have time to chat this week. It's about something important." I stared at the message for a moment, feeling a mix of frustration and dread. "Just ignore it," Taylor said, when I showed them the text. But I couldn't. Ignoring it would only prolong the situation. So, reluctantly, I agreed to meet with them. We met at a local cafe. Linda was all smiles, trying to maintain an air of casual warmth. Charles, on the other hand, was more reserved, his discomfort evident. After some small talk, Linda cut to the chase. "Alex, we're going to be up front with you," she said, her tone serious. "Charles and I are in a bit of a bind. We've fallen behind on some payments, and with the economy being what it is..." She trailed off, as if expecting me to fill in the blanks. Charles stepped in. "We know you've worked hard for what you have, and we wouldn't ask if we weren't truly in need. But if you could lend us some support, just until we get back on our feet, it would mean the world to us." I leaned back in my chair, taking a moment to process their words. "You're asking me for a loan?" "Not a loan," Linda said, quickly. "Think of it as an investment in family. We'd be eternally grateful, and of course, we'd pay you back as soon as possible." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my frustration in check. "I understand that you're in a tough spot," I said slowly. "But I've worked really hard to get to where I am, and I can't just give that up. Especially not when I've spent years feeling like I wasn't even part of this family." Linda's smile faltered, and Charles frowned. "That's not fair, Alex," he said. "We've always cared about you." "Really?" I said, my voice sharpening. "Because for years I was treated like I didn't belong. And now, suddenly, I'm family, because you need something from me." Linda's face turned red. "That's not what this is about," she said defensively. "Isn't it?" I replied. The tension in the air was thick. I stood up, signaling that the conversation was over. "I'm sorry you're in this situation, but I can't help you. I hope you find a way to work things out." And with that, I walked away. The aftermath of my conversation with Linda and Charles was swift and frankly ugly. It started with passive-aggressive texts. "Linda, we never thought you'd turn your back on family, Alex, after all we've done to welcome you." "Charles, you've really disappointed us. We thought you were better than this." I stared at my phone, incredulous. after all they've done to welcome me, I said out loud, showing Taylor the messages. What exactly have they done besides make me feel like an outsider for years? Taylor shook their head, clearly just as frustrated as I was. They don't see it that way. They're so used to taking without giving that they can't handle being told no. But it didn't stop there. The texts turned into phone calls, some from Linda, some from Charles, and a few from Taylor's siblings, who clearly had been roped into the drama. "I can't believe you're being so selfish, Alex," one of Taylor's brothers said in a voicemail. "Mum and Dad have always been there for us, and now when they need help, you're just going to abandon them. That's low." I deleted the voicemail without responding. The situation started to strain my relationship with Taylor. Not because they were taking their family's side, they weren't, but because the constant stress was wearing us both down. "I feel like I've put you in an impossible position," Taylor said one night, their voice heavy with guilt. "This isn't your fault," I assured them. "Your parents' choices are their responsibility, not yours or mine. But I won't lie, it's exhausting dealing with this." We tried to move on, but Taylor's family wasn't making it easy. A week later, Linda escalated the situation by posting a long, dramatic status on Facebook. "It's heartbreaking when the people you thought you could count on turn their backs on you in your time of need. Family is supposed to help each other, but I guess that's not true for everyone. Some people only care about themselves." She didn't name me directly, but everyone who read it knew exactly who she was talking about. The post got dozens of comments from extended family and family friends, most of them expressing sympathy for Linda and outrage at the selfish person who had let her down. I was furious, not because I cared about what her friends thought of me, but because she was trying to paint herself as the victim while completely ignoring the years of exclusion and disrespect I had endured. Taylor saw the post before I did and immediately called Linda. I could only hear Taylor's side of the conversation, but it was clear they weren't holding back. "This is ridiculous, Mom," Taylor said, their voice rising. "You're throwing Alex under the bus for not giving you money. Do you not realize how unfair that is?" Whatever Linda said in response didn't sit well with Taylor, because they ended the call with a curt, "Well, maybe you should think about why we don't feel obligated to help you." After that, Taylor and I agreed to step back from their family entirely, for our own sanity. "Let's just focus on us," Taylor said. "They can figure their stuff out without dragging us into it." I nodded, relieved. Agreed, but deep down, I couldn't help but wonder if this was truly the end of the drama. Weeks passed, and for the first time in a long while, things felt peaceful. Taylor and I focused on our relationship, enjoying quiet nights at home and planning future trips. The constant barrage of messages from their family had finally stopped, or so I thought. One evening, while I was preparing dinner, Taylor walked into the kitchen with a conflicted look on their face. "My mum called me today," they said. I set down the knife I was holding, already bracing myself. "What did she say?" Taylor hesitated. "She apologized." That was the last thing I expected to hear. "Wait, what?" I asked, blinking in surprise. "She said she's been doing some thinking," Taylor continued. "She admitted that she hasn't treated you fairly over the years, and she said she regrets how she handled things." I leaned against the counter, trying to process this information. "Did she say why she suddenly had a change of heart?" Taylor shrugged. She said she talked to Aunt Carol. Apparently, Aunt Carol told her she was out of line for expecting us to bail them out after everything they've put you through, and she pointed out that the way they've treated you probably made you feel like you weren't part of the family. Hearing this was strange. I didn't know how to feel. On one hand, it was validating to know that someone else in Taylor's family saw my side of things. But on the other hand, I wasn't sure if I could trust Linda's apology. "Did she say anything about the Facebook post?" I asked. Taylor nodded. "She said she regrets posting it and that she took it down." I raised an eyebrow. "And what about the financial help? Did she apologize for that too?" Taylor hesitated, which told me everything I needed to know. "She still thinks we should have helped," Taylor admitted. "But she said she understands why we didn't, and she promised to stop pressuring us." I sighed. Well, I guess that's something. Over the next few days, I tried to process how I felt about Linda's apology. Part of me wanted to believe she was sincere, but another part of me couldn't shake the the years of resentment I had built up. Eventually, Taylor convinced me to meet with their parents for a casual lunch. "Just hear them out," Taylor said. "If it goes badly, we don't have to see them again. But if they're really trying to make amends, maybe it's worth giving them a chance." Reluctantly, I agreed. The lunch started off awkwardly. Linda and Charles were clearly nervous, and for once, they didn't dominate the conversation. Instead, they listened as Taylor and I talked about our lives. After we finished eating, Linda finally brought up the elephant in the room. "I know, I've said this already, but I want to apologize again," she said, looking directly at me. "I've been thinking a lot about how I've treated you, Alex, and I realize now that it wasn't right. You've always been good to Taylor, and you've always been kind to us, even when we didn't deserve it." Charles chimed in, his tone unusually humble. "We let our pride and expectations get in the way, and we're sorry for that." I didn't know what to say. Their words sounded genuine, but I couldn't help but wonder if they were only apologizing because they had no other choice. "I appreciate you saying that," I said carefully. "But an apology doesn't erase everything that's happened. It's going to take time to rebuild trust." Linda nodded, her eyes misty. "I understand, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right." After the lunch, I felt a cautious sense of relief. It wasn't forgiveness, I wasn't there yet, but at least there was an acknowledgement of how I'd been treated. Still, I decided to keep my guard up. Words were easy, actions would speak louder. Over the following weeks, Linda and Charles made small but noticeable efforts. Linda sent me a handwritten note thanking me for attending the lunch and promising to respect my boundaries moving forward. Charles called Taylor to check in and avoided bringing up any financial concerns. Even Taylor noticed the shift. "They're trying," Taylor said one night as we sat on the couch. "I know it doesn't erase everything, but I think they're really making an effort." "I see that," I admitted. "But I'm not ready to jump back in and play happy family. It's going to take more than a few kind gestures to undo years of hurt." Taylor nodded. "I get that, and I'm not asking you to forgive them overnight. Just don't shut them out completely." I promised to keep an open mind, but I also made it clear to Taylor that any trust I extended to their parents would come with conditions. One evening, Linda called me directly, which was unusual. I answered hesitantly, unsure of what to expect. "Hi, Alex," she began. Her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. "I wanted to ask if you'd consider coming to dinner next week. Just a small family thing. No expectations, just a chance to spend time together." I hesitated. "Linda, I appreciate the invitation, but I need to be honest. I'm not ready to jump back into things like nothing happened." "I understand," she said quickly, "and I don't want to pressure you, but I hope you'll think about it. It would mean a lot to Charles and me." "I'll think about. That's it," I said, keeping my response vague. As I hung up, I turned to Taylor. "She invited us to dinner. What do you think?" Taylor asked, trying to read my expression. "I think it's progress," I said, "but I'm still wary. I don't want to put myself in a situation where I feel disrespected again." Eventually, I agreed to attend the dinner, but I set clear boundaries beforehand. I told Taylor that if Linda or Charles reverted to their old behavior, condescending remarks, guilt trips, or entitlement, I'd leave immediately. Taylor agreed and promised to support me no matter what. The dinner was surprisingly pleasant. Linda cooked a meal from scratch, something she rarely did, and Charles asked me genuine questions about my work and hobbies. For the first time, I felt like they were trying to see me as a person rather than just Taylor's partner. At one point during the evening, Linda turned to me and said, "Alex, I just want you to know that we're so proud of everything you've accomplished. You've worked so hard, and it's inspiring to see how much you've achieved." I was caught off guard. Compliments like that were rare from her. I nodded politely, still unsure if her words were completely genuine, but it was a start. Over time, I began to see more consistent changes in Linda and Charles. They stopped making passive-aggressive comments, and they genuinely seemed to value my presence in Taylor's life. However, I also noticed they were still struggling financially. Taylor told me that they had sold their second car and downsized some of their expenses, but it was clear they were still in a precarious position. One day, Linda called me again, this time with a different tone. "Alex, I know I promised not to ask for help again, and I'm trying to respect that," she began. "But we're really struggling with the medical bills. Charles has been trying to pick up extra shifts, but it's taking a toll on his health. I don't know what to do. Her voice broke slightly, and for the first time, I felt a twinge of sympathy. She sounded defeated, not entitled. I took a deep breath. Linda, I appreciate you being honest with me. I'll think about what I can do, but I need you to understand that if I help, it's going to come with conditions. Of course, she said quickly. Anything. I decided to offer limited financial help, not as a handout, but as a structured loan. I drew up a written agreement outlining the terms, including a modest repayment plan. I also made it clear that this was a one-time offer and that I expected them to continue taking steps to improve their financial situation. When I presented the agreement to Linda and Charles, they looked surprised but grateful. Linda even teared up, thanking me repeatedly for being willing to help. This isn't just about the money, I told them. It's about building mutual respect. I'm happy to support you if you're willing to meet me halfway. They both nodded, promising to honor the agreement. In the months that followed, our relationship slowly improved. Linda and Charles stuck to the repayment plan, and their attitude toward me continued to shift. They no longer treated me like an outsider, and I began to feel like a valued part of the family. But while things were better, I knew I couldn't let my guard down completely. I had learned the hard way that boundaries were necessary, even with family. I continued to prioritize my own happiness and well-being, focusing on my relationship with Taylor and building the life we wanted together. As I reflect on everything that's happened, I can't help but wonder, did I make the right choice by helping them, even after how they treated me? Or should I have stood firm and walked away for good?